Okay guys, welcome back to Extreme IE here. In this video, we want to take a look at triggered updates. And what exactly are triggered updates? I don't know if you've heard me say this in some of the videos that I've recorded so far, but RIP version 2 allows us to do this thing called triggered updates. So imagine, think about how RIP works default, right? In its default state. Every 30 seconds, we send out an update, and that update essentially is everything. So every 30 seconds we send the same exact routing table. So router 4 takes his rib and says, hey man, oh, that's supposed to be a B. Every 30 seconds, router 4 says, hey man, here's my rib. And router 2 says, okay, cool. And then, when his timer's up, he says, oh yeah, by the way, here's my rib. And then router 1 says, here's my rib. But then what happens is that 30 seconds later, over here, router 4 says, oh, here's the exact same rib that I sent you 30 seconds ago. And router 2 says, great, cool, thanks. And when his timer expires, he says, oh, hey, router 1, here's the same exact rib that I sent you 30 seconds ago. And it's honestly kind of dumb, right? So rather than do that, we can have what we call triggered updates. Now, the thing is that not all interfaces are going to support this. I would check in your version of code. I would check check your device specific. In what I have, I can run it over a serial interface. And so it's not on the diagram, but I do have a serial interface here. It's actually serial, I think 2.0, running between router 6 and router 7. I didn't intend to use it, but it is there. And so it's what we're going to use to demonstrate our triggered updates. Now the subnet's going to be the same pattern here. So it's going to be 10.670/24. And so let's actually quickly take a look at this. It shouldn't take us too long to get this up and running. So I'm going to say config t router rip, and we'll say network 10.0.0.0. We're going to say version 2. I think we actually, you know what? I think we actually already have do show run section rip. Yeah, so let's say no router rip. I think we already had this configured from a previous video. Do show run or do show IP protocol. Let's make sure this is all gone. So we're going to say router rip version 2, no auto. We'll say network 10.0.0.0. Okay, because we want to enable it here on this interface. And we're going to say redistribute connected interfaces. We'll go to router. You can actually take a look to show run interface serial 2.0. Let's actually make sure we can ping between these guys first, right? That's always step one. If you don't have reachability, it kind of ruins the rest of your day. Do show run section rip. All right, looks good. So we'll say config t router rip version 2, no auto, network 10.0.0.0, redistribute connected, do show IP rip data. Okay, so we're good to go. So we were able to configure RIP relatively quickly, and now we have the loopback 0 interfaces of router 6. So here, if I take a look at router 7, do show IP interface brief E assigned. Here's my 3 loopback addresses here, loopbacks 1 through 3. These are the guys we're concerned about. If I take a look at 6, do show IP interface brief E assigned. Here are the 3 loopback addresses that I'm concerned about. And so, we should have these in our routing table. But do show IP protocol will reveal that I'm going to go ahead and send, let's say, do debug IP rip. Hopefully I caught it. Good, I'm going to catch it. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and send this update out my interface. So here you go. Here you go, router 7. Here are the 4 loopback addresses that I was told to send you. And you know what's going to happen? Do you show IP protocol? And look at this. I mean, we received, right, an update. And you know what's going to happen in 30 seconds? Well, not 30 exactly, in 11 seconds, apparently. In 11 seconds, we are going to send this exact same update over again. And we're going to keep doing this forever until we're all dead. But there's no reason for that when you can go ahead and you can enable triggered updates. And essentially, what triggered updates is going to do is triggered updates is going to tell RIP, hey, listen, once you've gotten past that initial update, once you've actually sent your rib between these 2 devices, okay, once it's there and you've sent it, don't send the whole thing again. Only send the actual changes. Only send your information when there's a change. Don't just send everything all the time every 30 seconds. Send an update when there's a change. End of story. Pretty cool feature. So all we're going to do here is I'm first going to say passive interface default, and I'm going to say no passive serial 2.0 because I don't want to get updates on everything. And we don't really, actually, yeah, we might as well do that. Actually, no, we don't care. Yeah, let's do it. Passive interface, default, no passive, serial 20. Sorry, myself was fighting with myself. Do show run section, section RIP. So passive interface, good. Okay, so in order to do this, it has to be done under the interface. So we're going to say interface serial 20, and I'm going to say IP RIP, and I'm going to use the triggered command. Now, once I do that, and I say do show IP protocols again, you're going to notice something very interesting. And it's actually really weird. Let's say do debug IP RIP. I'm not sure exactly why they did this, but right now, my RIP configuration is going to say, hey, I'm going to send triggered updates. And it says, hey, I'm going to send this every essentially 7 seconds. Or, I'm sorry, yeah. So let's say do show IP RIP, or ISHI do show IP RIP, ISHI protocol. So I'm going to explain to you what's going on here in just 1 minute. And I left the debug on. Let me turn this back on so it doesn't keep happening. So what's going to happen here is that this counter is actually going to keep counting down. And it's really never going to stop. It's always going to keep counting down from that 30 seconds to the next update. The thing is that if we have triggered updates enabled, it's actually not going to send an update out that interface. But the thing is that the triggered update has to be configured on both sides. What's happening is that RIP is essentially, it's basically waiting for the other side to be configured. So both sides need to be configured. You can see that here, it's taken it off. Do show run interface serial 20. Do show run interface serial 20. You can see that I have it configured, but do show IP protocols reveals that it's off. But if I scroll all the way back up here, you can see that it was on. So what's happening is that RIP's not getting a response. So we need to go over to router 7 and say interface serial 20, and we're going to say do debug IP RIP. Let's turn this back on for both guys. Do debug IP RIP, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to say IP RIP, and I'm going to say triggered. Let's see what happens. Okay, do on all. You can see here that it says, hey, received version 2 triggered update. And it says sending version 2 ACK or acknowledgement. So our devices are actually going to acknowledge between one another. And you can see here received a version 2 triggered acknowledgement. So we are actually going to acknowledge the fact that we have triggered updates implemented on both sides. If we don't, you're going to see this continual asking, it's like a, hey, are you there? Are you there? Right? It's not really a hello. He's sending this triggered request, and he's waiting for that acknowledgement before he's actually going to enable it. So now if I go back and I say do show IP protocol, I'm going to see that now serial 20 is in fact enabled for a triggered update. So let's turn this debug back on. Do debug IP RIP. And let's leave this cranking for a minute. Do show or do debug IP RIP, and I'm going to say do show IP protocols on both boxes. This guy's going to be 10 seconds. So essentially, in 10 seconds, we should essentially see whether router 7 is going to send an update or not. Let's check router 6 as well. Do show IP protocols. This guy's going to happen in 14 seconds. At this point, we've already counted down to our 10 seconds. We've already missed the boat. Do show IP protocol. You can see that this counter's went back up to 20. And the reason is because this counter is going to continually count down, and then it's going to refresh. But we haven't had anything to trigger RIP to send an update. So let's actually cause one. Let's say interface loopback 1, and I'm going to shut this guy down. Actually, let me just make sure. Do debug IP RIP and say shut. And what we should see is that RIP now says, hey, I'm going to send a triggered update for 10676. And what's really interesting is the way that RIP does this. Now, I'm going to get into another video, but I do want you to notice just at this point what RIP does, essentially to let router 5 know that router is no longer reachable. He advertises it with a maximum metric of 16. This is what we call route poisoning. When we send an unreachable metric into our routing table, into our routing process, that's what we call route poisoning, okay? And you can see that, I think we turned the debug off here. Yeah, so now if I say do show IP route RIP on router 2 has removed that route because we have triggered updates enabled. So there's no longer any waiting. It's going to happen when that problem occurs. So if I say do debug IPRIP one more time, you guys are going to hate that command by the end of this series. And I say no shut to that loopback address. When we wait for it to come back on, what we're going to see is that RIP is going to go ahead and send a triggered update. Is going to send a triggered update, but he's going to send it back out with the regular metrics. So now if I go back to 6, and so you can see that router 6 received, oh, he did actually, I did leave the debug on. You can see that RIP on router 2 received this update. So we can say do show IP route RIP, and you can see that the route is now back. So this is triggered updates. This is how we can save ourselves some time and make RIP a little bit more, I want to say, friendly to our network. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in the next one.